Okay, we're now recording. So, hi everybody. My name is Dr. Sharon Shahaf from, me from Academic Writers Unblock. If you're on the group, if you are not, please join Academic Writers Unblock group where we offer mutual support to blocked academic writers, which I came to believe is 99.9% of academic writers. Today is coaching call. Free coaching call number 2 in our series of coaching calls that are gearing up towards my spring semester workshop. This is the first time I've tried doing a spring semester workshop because if there is anything I remember about spring semester is that nobody has time for anything during spring semester. It's a very hectic, busy time of the year. We have conferences, we have search committees. I don't know that we have any of these things anymore in COVID times, but people are gearing up for comps, they're defending things. It's a crazy time, but it is also true that when things get hectic, if you are already struggling, if you're already blocked, and if you're already in that, back to the wall, it tends to get worse when you hit that that sweet spot of busyness. And so I said, well, let me try this year, because I get a lot of one-on-one work. A lot of people want to do one-on-one work in the spring, but not so much take the workshop and do this deep dive into looking at their blockness and possible interventions. But my philosophies, and this is, I'm also writing this as a book project. I see the work for creative unblocking for academic writers as going on two routes which can intersect. And one is, I want to develop a curriculum that is part of the training of academics as writers. So that is already in place when you are in graduate school, when you have to deal with graduate school, and then when you have to deal with, of course, later on the publish or perish. So you already have a developed, mindful, regular routine and practice and process of writing that supports you through those challenges. However, we don't tend to go out and seek that help to develop that writing practice until we're freaked out, we're blocked, things are not adding up. And part of the reason, and this is some of what I want to go into today when I talk about the academic writer's block, is that we develop bad habits that kind of worked for us, right? So most of us were in academia because we loved school and we were good at school. We were good at doing school. And we all had that glorious child-free, whatever free days when we in our 20s, we were pursuing our education and there was the deadline and we were writing to the deadline and we could leave the sink in the dishes and we could just let everything go. And one time we wrote this really beautiful paper with our back to the wall because, not because there was a deadline, but we confused that causality, right? And then we teach ourselves that if we wait for that last moment, everything would magically come together around the deadline. And it's a cause and effect kind of reversal. That's a really bad habit that most academic writers I work with have. They confuse putting themselves in that corner with having a writing practice, right? So putting yourself in a corner and it will succeed, even if it succeeds 9 times out of 10, there will be that paper. There will be that moment where you counted on time running out and then you're going to do it. And the magic didn't happen. Now, add to that a toxic work environment, right? When this becomes a job, or even before it becomes a job, but definitely when it becomes a job, and more responsibilities. Maybe now you have children, maybe now you're taking care of older parents, maybe now, again, if you have that golden ticket and you're in a tenure track position, you have service, you have search committees, you have, whatever it is that you have, that habit no longer serves you. You wait for the last moment to do things and, you can. And this is just one example. There are other bad habits that we've developed that then you can find yourself, you're grasping for straws. Like, right? We say in Hebrew, you're trying to kind of lean over something that's not stable. It's like, you try to use a straw as a cane. That's actually from the Bible, but I know the Bible in Hebrew, so I don't know how that was translated in English, right? But when you're trying to kind of lean into something that's not stable, that's precarious, and then you're up shit creek with no paddle. So the two lanes, right, that I'm working with is, yes, it's great to develop a supportive, self-compassionate, mindful, slow, patient writing practice that would support you through, by being there well before something is due, etc. But you also need to be able to intervene when people are already spiraling, right? So my interventions, I have the stop, drop, and roll. I love that one. I love it not because I know I'm sorry. It's like I love when people are on fire and you need to tell them stop, drop, and roll. But I love that metaphor because it does help you to name I'm on fire, right? So I don't want somebody to think just because they're stressed out of their mind and now it's manifesting as a writer's block that there is nothing to do, because there is a lot that you can do and you can actually do it really quickly. You can really unblock pretty freakingly, there's kids around here, so I was going to say that word, pretty freaking fast by stopping, dropping, and rolling. Meaning the first step is to say, okay, I am stressed out. I am on fire, right? This is going on. I need to change something. Everything that I've tried before, and I know many of you might have already seen some of my videos, so this could be a little bit of a repetition, but it's always an opportunity to go back and review that basic. You have been trying everything that you already know to make progress. And sometimes what happens is all we know is the language of discipline and just sit there and just do it. And if you don't do it, you're lazy. You tell yourself you're in a loop of this negative self-talk. And it's time to try a different way. It's time to say, wait, maybe if this is not working out, it's not because I am, all the bad things that you tell yourself, I'm lazy, I'm dumb, I'm this, or I'm that. What if you shift to a different, more gentle way? So that's the basic approach I have. Now, I will, let me pause this to ask the people who are on the call, just so that they feel, so you guys can feel it, I'm going to pause the recording, just ask you a little bit about, what brings you here today, unless you don't mind sharing. Do you prefer if I stop the recording? Yeah, I'll stop it. So we're back recording, and I'm going to start sharing a little bit from behind the paywall. So this is from, we were discussing, if I can recap without naming names, right? We were discussing the different challenges that are coming up when we show up to write. And we got to talk about, just having so much going on, and you have your kids and you have your work and you have your job and you have this and you that, and you're taking care of people. And then you are also taking the time to schedule things and everything. And then you show up and it's not, the writing is not coming or it's not happening. And we talked about, are you skipping a stage? So I decided to share a little bit from the class on time, which is one of, this is the second or the third unit in the workshop, because first we talk about writer's block and the dynamic of writer's block and the brain science behind writer's block and the emotional, psychological reasons for writer's block. And then we talk, that's the first block unit. I shouldn't use block. And then the second unit of the class introduces, interventions, psychological, cognitive, practical interventions to actually get unblocked. And then we start talking about time, and it's called exploring, planning, scheduling, and accepting. Accepting, how do you deal with time? And the idea with accepting is that, and I love using the Salvador Dali picture of fluid time, because really one of the main points that, one of the things that I invite people to do when they think about time is to understand that we do have different experiences of time. Different people work differently over time. They have different energy needs. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, what that means. Some people are very regular and they really benefit from being at the same time, at the same place, doing the same thing. Some people might benefit from this, but their life circumstances that, don't allow for that. Yet others are not consistent. I'm like that. I need to, I have booms and busts. Like I need to know to wait and store energy and then explode. And then I can write as many pages as, I have a friend who she needs to be regular and she will, do that many pages per day, working 2 hours every morning. And I can get to the end of the week and get as many pages if I rested and I waited and I kind of stored my momentum. By Friday, we will have the same amount of pages, right? So different people have different meanings and different needs around time. So, I'm gonna go over this real quickly, but my main premise around time is that you need to learn not to fight against correct timing. We tend to try to control the timing of things, but with creative writing or creative expression, and I know academic writing has, and I'm getting to talk about this in a minute, has a logical side and a creative side. But we kind of tend to have the logical side kind of try to overpower the creative side. But with creative expression, it's really important to remember that it is very much independent of willpower and has its own unique timing that cannot be controlled, right? And we tend to try to control rather than understand timing. And then we judge our needs around timing, time and energy. Again, I would talk through this slide in a lot more detail when it's in a workshop. And we would stop and write, and you can stop, and write this if you're watching this later. How does this show up for you? Are you trying to control the creative timing? So going back to this, one of the people on the call said, I would show up, but then the writing doesn't come, right? So that sounds to me like this exact problem or exact moment where you try to control something that has its own timing. So, I would say in this situation, so for example, what if you show up and if the writing paragraph 1 of whatever is not available? What if you, for example, took a blank page and just, free flow and you wrote whatever did come, you journal about it, you wrote about it, you got the ball rolling? Because a lot of times this, this could be a really simple trick that can help you kind of get, Julia Cameron talks about, are you trying to hurl yourself over the wall, or you can just dig under, you can take a tunnel under. There are, we always try to jump above the wall. What if there's a gate, in the wall and we're not paying attention? Like, are there other ways except for what you had in mind? I'm going to go there and I'm going to write the final product. If you're not ready for the final product, maybe you're trying to skip a stage. So actually, I want to jump to the stages. All right, so let's talk about this. The creative process, and writing is a creative process, has stages. So again, in the workshop, we spend a lot of time talking about the different stages. And the thing is, everybody has different stages, and between 2 different projects, the same writer can have different stages. Okay, so every project might work a little differently. But I love this. This is taken from Lorraine Herring. I have that book somewhere here. Oh, well, the book is called On Being Stuck by Lorraine Herring. And she talks, she adopts an agricultural kind of metaphor, right? So she starts, if you are talking about agriculture, right? There is the stage when you need to plant. I will say before that, there needs to be a seed. You need to find the seed. So you can see here that I apply this for academic work. So I would say before planting, you gotta gather seeds sometimes. So for example, when you're in graduate school, if you're taking graduate classes, maybe you are taking all the seeds in and you wanna decide which seed is going to be the most fruitful. And sometimes you actually, so I'm adding more and more things here. Like, so for example, you might do, what farmers a lot of time do is that they plant all the seeds and then they wait to see which seed actually took hold and was the healthiest. And they cultivate that one and they throw out the ones that weren't as fruitful. So for example, this could be a whole stage that even comes before planting, right? So again, then, you plant And then, you gather, you sort, you harvest. And there's also stages where there's stillness and pausing. So, for example, you don't go out to the field to plow when it's muddy. If you would try to go out during the wrong season and do, and plow the field when you're actually, it's not the right time, you would undo the good that you've done before, right? So what we do in the workshop, and you can see on this other end here, I invite the attendees to kind of think through their own stages for their own academic projects, right? So planting could, for example, be field work, research, interviews, work in the literature. Now, again, it depends on your field. If you are in quantum science, I don't know if in quantum physics or biology, this could look differently. For me, I was in global media, so for example, for my dissertation, I went and did a project of oral histories with the producers of the first Israeli sitcom in the 80s. And, I had to go several times back. I was in Texas, Austin, going back. Every time I went home, I interviewed and I snowballed, that sample that, you talk to someone and you ask for the next person. And I ended up interviewing like 30 or so people. That took years, right? So before is this planting? Maybe, sorting, right? So I planted this and then I ended up with so much, right? And I also did archival work. So again, there are stages. So for those, of you who are, especially if you're in graduate school, you have not mastered this yet, you might be teaching yourself the stages, right? And also this thing can happen concurrently, right? You can do the field work and research and interviews, and you might jump to harvesting, which is planning, outlining, drafting and revising. You might jump to drafting and revising because you might want to release a quick early article that has some of the early findings, right? But you're also working on a longer project. So as you can see, what I'm really trying to have people think through is if the writing process has stages, and definitely in academic writing, there are extra stages, right? Are you allowing for the stages? Are you showing up with the patience? Because it's not just patience, it's self-compassion. Are you expecting yourself to be at stage Z when you're in stage A, B, or C? And so a lot of the time, what really is going on is that you are either you're trying to skip a stage, or you are you're frustrated that you're not in the right, that you're not in the stage that you want to be. Either way, so many times you're not really stuck, but rather what is going on is that you are you're mixed up about the stage that you are. So let me jump actually into another concept, which is from a really nice book called A Writer's Time by Kenneth Achiti. So a lot of these books are actually not they're not directed at academic writers. So a lot of the books, a lot of the stuff that I have people reading in the workshops are books for the general writerly audience. And they have really wonderful advice. So this one actually is a really good book. Let me see if I can find it. It's called A Writer's Time by Kenneth Achiti. It's a really good book. Oh, it's not here, but guess what? I found on Being Blocked, on Being Stuck. That was the book I talked about before by Lorraine Herring. So Kenneth Achiti talks about beginning time versus middle time versus end time. He has a whole chapter, and this is actually one of the best chapters about writing and time that I've ever read. And he talks about, when you are in a project, you need to understand, are you in the beginning, the middle, and the end? And he talks about how each of these stages has advantages and disadvantages. Beginning has its fresh energy of, you're still just exploring something, but it can also be a time of doubt and confusion, right? So you have to have kind of the self-compassion, the patience, the wherewithal, like the strength to withstand the challenges of the time you're in. So if you're in early time, for example, if you are in graduate school and you're just learning how to do this and you don't have mastery yet, this is in many ways it's beginning time. I many times when I work with graduate students, I see, they put so much emphasis on their their term papers. And I tell them, listen, a term paper is just a first draft of maybe a journal article, or it's the first draft of a part of a dissertation chapter. If you don't treat every stage of the process like it has to be the most perfect thing, right? A term paper is not supposed to be a ready to publish journal article. But if you can just flesh out one idea or flesh out one theory or flesh out whatever, one thing that you want to say, and you can zoom in on it and do that well, then the term paper can build into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, right? So understanding where you are in time. And the stages are of the project, but also of your own career, right? So understanding the stage you're in, having patience to grow based on what is necessary at the moment in time is going to be a really powerful, helpful practice, or even kind of way of thinking to internalize, right? So let me ask you this, and you don't have to answer right now, but if you're watching this at home, or if you're, for those of you who are here, I invite you to journal on this. Are you impatient? Are you skipping stages? Now, another thing that I said that I don't think was recorded, so I will repeat this a little bit. I often ask people to think about the part of themselves that writes or that does the academic work or whatever, that's the research, as a younger child, the inner part. Because what happens a lot of times is that we are really, really horrible to ourselves, right? So I was saying before, and I don't think it was recorded, right? And this was from something that happened to me this week. My son is, 9 and is doing remote schooling at home. And he came to me freaking out because they just learned how to subtract and add fractions. And he didn't get it right away. Right? This is hard. And he came into my room and he started like waterworks, right? Because he couldn't immediately figure it out. Right. So then, imagine turning on that child and going like, oh, you didn't get it. You're lazy. Just sit there and do it and make it happen. And everybody would be like, oh, how dare, like nobody would think that was a good parenting. But when we parent ourselves, we tend to do that as academics. We tend to tell ourselves, if we don't know how to do something yet, or if we struggle, it's because we're lazy or not motivated or dumb or whatever it is, right? So we need to do a better job parenting ourselves around allowing ourselves to have a process of growth, of development, of mastery that happens over time. All right, so another element of the work that we do in the workshops, etc., when we look at the writer's block, and that is, and again, I mentioned this before, but I wasn't recording, the baggage that we carry with us, the stories that we carry from childhood, right? Because a lot of us come to academia because we were always, in a way, we were good at school, right? We were these people that really loved school and loved being in school, but also our place in the family and in the relationship between us and our parents, sometimes we get caught up in that place because we knew that we can come home, and if we did well at school, everybody was, assuaged, and they felt, and so a lot of time we have a story that we carry with us from childhood that we don't feel loved or we don't feel safe unless we really excel in the academic work. And that really doesn't leave a lot of room for, not freaking out when you are facing any kind of challenge. So really what I want everybody that's, watching this now or later to take the time to do a little bit of an inquiry. And it can feel like it's a big luxurious thing to think about your inner psychological struggles. But in fact, I don't even think 9 times out of 10, I think 10 times out of 10, when we get stuck, there is some sort of a psychological or cognitive hiccup that is bringing one of those patterns, those older stories that we carry, the baggage, into play. All right, let me see what else I wanted to share here from. All right. Oh, this one is great. So this one is from Roseanne Bain, from her book Around the Writer's Block, which is a different book, but it also talks about the stages. So let me quickly share with you guys, again, another way of looking at the different stages of the writing process to ask whether or not, if you're struggling with your writing, Are you not recognizing what stage you are in? So she talks about first insight, right? So the first stage is, and what I love about this is that she also says, what does it look like in your work life when you are in the stage? So for the stage that's called first insight, she says, what you need to do, you're showing up for work, you're asking questions, you free write, you cluster. I can't get too much into the clustering, but it's, it's a brainstorm method where you do, again, for example, again, I'm taking a blank page. I don't know if, hang on, let me stop sharing this to make sure. So, you might take a blank page and, this is your topic. I don't know that you can see it. And you start writing, a lot of different things that connect, and you cluster them together, right? You do like some sort of a map or a storyboard, right? So that's what she means by clustering. All right. So this is the kind of stuff that you want to do for first insight. Then she talks about the second stage. It's called saturation. This is when you research, and again, this is not from work that this is directed at general writers, but it's really so useful for us as academic writers because we definitely always have to go through this stage of saturation. So that's basically when you research and you immerse yourself in methods and inquiries. So again, back to what I said before, it would be, this field work, research, interviews, work in the literature, right? And then using the same to start creating your project files, your notes, your data, all of that, all right? So then what's really beautiful about what she talks about when she talks about saturation is that she is talking about left brain and right brain dynamics. So she's basically saying what you need to do is get lost in it and allow yourself to get confused. Allow yourself to get to saturation. And you know what happens once you're fully saturated and completely turned around in it. This is when you get the epiphany, right? So she talks about incubation and illumination, right? So you're saturated in the research, can't see the forest from the trees. You got to go through it. Sometimes there's no way through it, but through it, right? There are so many threads and everything seems important and everything seems, right? How many of us actually think that we're stuck? And we're not stuck. We're just afraid of going through that stage of saturation, right? So many times people think that they're really super stuck, and instead what they can't tolerate is showing up for the confusion of saturation and then waiting for incubation. So in the part where she talks about incubation, she says, what you need to do is procrastinate. Can you believe how fun, right? She says, go procrastinate, nap, walk, do artist dates, which is something that I teach in the class. I'm not going to go too much into that, but that's also from Julia Cameron. It's basically going once a week, taking an hour or 2 hours completely alone and going into again, this is pre-COVID, right? But like going in a museum, or, I would go in a bookstore or a stationery store. Like I would go to the dollar store and just buy rubrics. Here's something that I bought, just a rubric of owls. I don't know if you can see it, that I can then later, see for my process time where I'm procrastinating. I like to paint owls and color inside, whatever, right? So you can see the shift in the mind frame, because I've never been told as a graduate student, go take a walk, go procrastinate. Give yourself time to incubate your next insight. And so after you saturate yourself and you procrastinate and you let yourself have a process of epiphany, then you get illumination. This is the moment, the aha moment, right? And what do you do during the illumination moment, the aha moment? You free write, you make lists, you do a mind map, you do something called dreamstorm. And again, I teach all those techniques in the workshop I'm taking right now. But all right, and then stage 5 is called verification. You know what that is? That is what we call writing, flapping fingers on, all right? Only the 5th stage, all right? So if you are willing to understand, to spend some time researching your own natural process, and then the kids are not, fucking allow yourself to have this process, right? Then you would not burn out as much. If you could accept that to produce an academic product that is a journal article or a dissertation chapter or whatever it is, a book that you are allowed, in fact, you are required to go through stages. Now, please understand, this is rinse, repeat. I love stage 6. This is all the stages, this hibernation or recharge time. So I want to really press that this is not necessarily linear. You can have first insight, and you might have this, for example, in different projects. Okay, did you guys finish kind of copying this? So you might have to go back to incubation, or you might have to go back, right? So depending on how big the project is, so for example, for a monograph, for a book, you might have to go through all the stages to produce your proposal that gets you the book contract. And then you might have to go through this again when it's time to write chapter 1. All right. So the same with a dissertation. You might have to go through all the stages to produce your prospectus and defend it. And then when it's time to go, you might have to go through the stages again and again. And it's not linear. So what I'm trying to say is, if you schedule the time and you're sitting there and it's not happening, ask yourself, is there something else that I need to do? Am I trying to skip stages? So again, this is just one example for an intervention that my class takes a long time working with you and then workshopping individually to help academic writers just develop a grounded, I can say this, I feel like standing up and standing on the ground, because this is one of the things that I do, is that I invite people to do meditations that are very grounded. Get grounded in the reality, the material reality of the writing life. We tend, as academics, a lot of time to live up here in our head. And when we live up here in our head, it's very perfectionist and very impatient and very judgy of our own self. And it backfires a lot of the time. Now, again, at the best of time, when you don't have COVID and you don't have, when I'm thinking back on my career, when I didn't have kids and I was this, carefree, even then, it wasn't really balanced. I would get sick every time I had deadlines and, all of that. So it's really, we are up here. The first thing we have to offer our inner writer is judgment, critique, anger, frustration, right? And so then what happens? Why would that child want to come out and play with you? That inner writer is like, I don't like that lady. She's mean. So you are scaring away the more creative parts of you that are very vulnerable. They want to be admired and loved. This is, again, what I'm demonstrating to you is another intervention and another tool, which is you can do this written or not written, but I love to do this as written meditations, where you actually give voice to different parts of your psyche, right? So I developed as I was, and this was also, many of these books, but definitely this one on being stuck with a red herring, and this one that's called Dancing in the Dragon Den from Roseanne Bain, who's both of them are writing and unblocking experts, coaches, consultants, whatever. But they also teach meditations and they teach yoga and stuff like that. So they give you a lot of written meditations where you create. So you can do it in many different ways. You can create characters. So for example, I started remembering myself as a 6-7-year-old. My neighbor had a tree and he would work until late. He was a widower, so there was no one there. So I would, go to my neighbor's tree. And so I started writing letters to that child in the tree, right? And for example, when I tell you, that child was the one who told me, I don't want to come down from the tree. I was like, come down from the tree and help me write this, whatever, this book. And she was like, I don't want to, because you're mean to me. You're not even nice. You're not letting me play, And so then I started asking, okay, what do you need from me? So again, this may sound crazy, but there is nothing more logical than bringing into conversation parts of you that you actually need to be fostered, cultivated, and encouraged for you to be able to get, in touch with the part of you that creates. So I don't know if that made sense or not. I think I wanted to just jump into yes, we're running out of time. So I do want to leave some time for questions or comments, but I really just wanted to delve into some of the things that we do in the workshops to give those of you who are watching later at home, and also those of you who join, a sense of what, the kind of tree-hugging, fun-loving engagement with the writing process that can really help you unblock when you are no longer getting the bang for your buck from that good old, I will make myself sit there and I will make myself right, God damn it, and white knuckle it. Because, and I said it in many other videos, so excuse me if I'm repeating, but if you only have a hammer, right, and it's not doing the work, you might want to think about, using a different instrument. Maybe you need a feather. Maybe you need a trumpet. I don't know, maybe you need a chisel, maybe you need a different instrument. Because if you are, when you are stuck, when you are blocked, you usually need to become very creative about the ways in which you engage your writing process. Okay, no more for me. So, maybe more, a little bit more in a minute, but I wanted to see if there were comments or questions or thoughts. Kristen, do you want? I see you're nodding.
I'm an enthusiastic nodder. And
oh, good. Yeah. Hey, I appreciate that.
I nod a lot. No, but it's really, I really think this is interesting, and it reminds me of when I was in the, I don't know, really in the trenches of writing, finishing my book. That it was when I was traveling, and I had traveled abroad, and I had, severe jet lag, and I was up really early in the morning, and I had hours, and I just went out and I walked in this foreign city for a long time, and I just, things just happened. And I normally don't have that space in my life, but maybe, right, so saying oh, this is writing time. I'm just going to go take a random walk through a city. And
yes.
That's writing time.
Absolutely, and it counts. So I love that you said it. So a couple of things. I would call those scooter thoughts. When I was getting my BA in Tel Aviv, buses, it was, it's a very hard city to park in. So I had a scooter, and I would call them scooter thoughts. Yeah. When you let it go, what happens? Why did you get those thoughts, right? Think about it. When you're I'm going to sit there and make my, everything escapes you, and when you let it go, you get twice as much, right? It comes back to you. So actually, I didn't get to that slide, but I have this big slide that just say, know when to let it go. So when you let it go, so absolutely taking a walk. Now, here's the thing I want to say, and this is for all the moms out there and parents, but mostly moms, and during COVID time and all of that, people here have 5,000 jobs and things. I hear you. It's not easy, but I will say this: when you're stuck, if you have 1 hour and you're going to spend it sitting at your desk, not working, getting frustrated, getting more down on yourself, or you could take a walk completely outside. For me, it's a no-brainer. Sometimes, what I do during my work time, when I pay somebody to come and be here, etc., is take that walk. Go and take. So this is an enormous area that we work on in the first 3 weeks of the workshop, is learning to have, so I'll throw it in here, what Roseanne Bain calls process time versus product time. So this is from Around the Writer's Block. Where is that book? It's a great book. I want you guys to buy it and work with it. I don't have it here, but it's Roseanne Bain, and it's called Around the Writer's Block. She talks about scheduling three different types of time: process time, product time, and kind of self-care time, right? And she talks about creating a habit of when so for me, process time could be my doodling. So let me show you more examples. This is not, it's not art. I mean, it is, but it's not, I'm not doing this to sell this in coffee shops or whatever, you know what I mean? But I like to sit and listen to music and have these beautiful rubrics and draw. And so here's the other thing, right? Speaking about that relationship with your younger parts, or the one, right, the part that writes, I used to go to coffee shops to work and I would doodle, but then I would feel guilty. Now it's completely different. I'm allowed, that's my process time. I'm allowed to listen to music and doodle. And I know that that puts me in playful, creative, again, read Roseanne Bain's book Around the Writer's Block, because she goes into the brain science of it, but a little bit, right? It's popular science. Your brain needs that playful left brain, right brain interaction. So if you create a ritual where you start with process time. Now, for some people, process time could be playing a musical instrument. For others, it could be doing yoga. For yet somebody else who's really addicted to, working out, it can be working out. It really depends, or it could be taking a walk. But if you can say you only have 1 hour, but you say, okay, 30 minutes, I'm allowed and I'm celebrated. And what you said before, this is writing down. It counts. You count it as work time, because that's a way to fool the part of you that's like, wait a minute, you're lazy. No, you're allowed, right? So then you create this ritual. Like for me, the ritual of me writing starts with me sitting at my desk, drinking my coffee, staring out the window, doodling, listening to music. And guess what? Then I'm already there. It's easier to then go into product time. So product time, and again, don't forget the stages. Product time is not now to be like, now I have to do this. Product time is every single little thing that brings you closer to having something written. It's research, it's, my scholarship, I'm a television scholar. So sometimes it's sitting there watching, watching Israeli television, but, watching it, taking notes, or setting up interviews, but everything counts. So yeah, another thing is a really good that came up from, I know you said two things and I was like, oh, but you said a lot of really good things in there. So creating a process, a practice that has room for your process as well as product time, and taking care of yourself time is essential. Letting things happen, right? Believe in the magic of letting it go and letting things come together. All right, so sorry, I was so does that resonate with, do you feel like now because of COVID, because of everything, you're not allowed, maybe it's time to kind of go back and revisit the idea of, if you can shift one habit, right, to look at introducing process time, for example?
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's difficult because it asks something of others. So I have to, somebody else has to watch my children.
Right.
To go for a walk. And, but say, well, if the other part's not going to happen. Exactly.
So you are also hitting every one sentence you said hits on something so big, that guilt, I heard somebody said, they take out the child, they take out the placenta and they put in guilt, or, guilt is motherhood's middle name. I heard different people say, listen, yes. So the belief, see, this is how I would work in a workshop. I would catch you having a story, and the story goes, I am not allowed, if I do process time, I am somehow, I have guilt because I'm taking time away from my kids and then I will have fun. No, I have to work, and work is not fun. So you see how many stories are stockpiling here? How about rewrite that story? And again, in process time, in meditations, in journaling, you write a story where work is fun. You started, if you're in academia, you had how do I put it mildly? You wanted to do the work. One time it was fun to explore these things, right? And so we have a story here that's a false story. Oh, now that it's serious, I can no longer have fun, right? That kind of story. And guess what? Your inner creative part is like, forget that, lady. I'm not coming to work. because she's just working me and she's not letting me play, right? That's the Shining, all work and no play. But it's really, there's deep truth to that. Because what if you change the story to say, I'm actually honoring the time I'm taking away from my child because I'm going to do this, the things that I really need to do in order for my work to align with my sense of purpose. And for me to do that, it can't be about suffering. Who said that producing academic writing has to be a horrible, terrible, soul-crushing process? Why aren't you allowed to enjoy it? Right? Where in fact, you can't really do it when for a very, very long time, you're not enjoying it because the part of you that writes is going to be like, get up and walk away and leave you at that desk, banging your head, at the desk. So what merit is there in sitting there being stuck? Now you're being punished. Now you're punishing yourself, right? So you see, that's as rituals go, that's not a great one to have around your writing, right? So what I invite you to do is explore the idea that you're allowed to have fun with it. You're allowed to be playful with it. That it is in fact the most efficient thing to do. That it is in fact the best way to honor your time away from each other. Also, let me just say, kids don't need us 24/7. They need other people. They need, like this idea that there's a lot to unpack with the guilt as well, right? But that's yet another one. So, yeah.
I was just agreeing.
Okay, good. So so this is the kind of stuff. So definitely, if you took nothing else from this today, and you're going to try to explore the idea that you're allowed to take time to understand the stages of the process, to have patience for it, and then to be allowed to explore working as something that doesn't have to be torturous, right? This is a really big story that a lot of us said. If we are to make progress, we have to suffer at this. We have to work and suffer. And sometimes, think about the best things you've written. Were you in a state of torture, or were you able to get through it into a state of blissful alignment with something you want to say, right? So this is the work I do, is like to remind everybody here that the work you do comes from a sense of purpose that you have inside, that you have something to say, that you have something that you want, and this idea of it has to be torture, in fact, scares away the part inside that's inspired, and it's shutting it down. And then that part is like, I'm not showing up because I'm not even honored. I'm not allowed to be a part of this process, and really explore. And this is where the shadow work, why I recommend the shadow work, because we form those stories based on observations we made when we were about 7 years old. We looked at our parents, we made some observations, right? And so the Jungian idea of shadow work is you revisit judgments that you've made as a very young child, right? So the idea is that you create your ego and then you create your shadow, right? So everything that you're being told is at a young age, so for example, we don't touch the air, good girls don't, blah, 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 right? And so we build our ego, right? Our conscious part by saying, okay, yeah, we don't do this and we don't do that. And then the binary of this goes in the shadow. Now, the second part of life, says Jung, what we need to do is mine the shadow for gold. We might have made some judgments when we were 7 that no longer serve us. So for example, the judgment that work has to be torture, do you want to revisit that? So shadow work is a really good way, playful, meditative way where you engage in the language of dream and symbols and folklore. So, a lot of time I would have people choose their favorite folk, tale or fairy tale and explore why they like it, right? And fairy tales are really mythical and archetypical, right? It's like you killed the mother, it's always awful. And so you kind of revisit the shadow to see, did you leave something there that actually would serve you better as part of your, do you want to revisit the judgments you've made as a 7-year-old based on the way your parents, most of us look at how our parents live and are like, no, we don't necessarily our values might have evolved. We don't really agree with all the values the way we were brought up. Or maybe even our interpretation was, as a child, you interpret certain things, right? And then it becomes a fixed story that you are not even conscious of, that is limiting your ability to align with your joy, with your sense of purpose, with all of these good things. So that's the kind of work that, and I know it's so counterintuitive, as a hurried tenure track academic, I didn't know all of these things. I wish I've known all these things back then, because, it might have ended differently, but, now I'm writing a lot of other things, but there is just limitations to what the logical kind of spoke more, side of us can bring us. And I think a lot of time with academic writing, we just believe that only applying this logical, and again, I didn't get into this and I really need to go, but I had a whole slide about the logic versus the creative, right? And of course they're intertwined like this, but logic tells us that, we can only do things by repeating them again and again and again, right? You have to go in the lab and you have to have the same exact result. That's logic, right? And so also that the only way to make progress is to repeat again the pattern until you perfect it, right? But that's really draining for our creative side. The creative side is mutational. There's magic. Something completely mutative can come out of you. And the timing for that is not through repetition. It's through, that uncontrollable timing. So I really am inviting people to think about these two sides of them, the logical side and the creative side, as conjoined twins, right? Like we try to only be logical, but we actually need to also tap the creative in order to have a balance. We need both. All right. So yeah, I that's on a very kind of just touching on it on the way out today. All right, my friends, I would love to hear more questions or comments. And for those of you watching this later, feel free to ask me questions or, send me comments or questions as comments on the Facebook. I am looking into I'm offering, I'm just not sure it's going to make, I'm offering a spring semester shorter workshop. It's 7 weeks. We go through, again, writer's block, intervention writer's block. We spend 2 weeks looking at time, the way you approach time, your own management of time, and then understanding the project schedule. How do you approach time, scheduling and getting through projects? And then we look at style and craft elements. So that's what we usually call writing, right? We look at the formula for a research paper and how to understand, this is where we workshop our own stuff. This workshop, every time I teach it, everybody's happy, everybody's unblocked, everybody's is quickly making progress. So I really hope that we can still have it. If not, I'm definitely doing my summer. Summer is not a problem. Everybody wants to do this kind of work in summer. So stay in touch if you want to do this as a workshop, or if ever you want to do one-on-one work. I'm also here, and I'm using COVID to actually take the time to write this as a book project. So I'm actually happy with doing the workshop or not doing the workshop, because I'm privileged enough to have I'm doing the kids are at home, my business and the writing, and these are our top priority. But I really hope that, I also love teaching this. So if it comes together, I would be delighted. All right, my friends, thank you for showing up on a Friday afternoon. Apparently not the best time for most people. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you got it. I hope it helped.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Let me know. Yeah, keep the conversation going. I'm here. You know, DM me or whatever. All right. Have a great weekend.